Hey, hi everyone. Hey, okay, sorry, I think, on mute. You guys did not hear me. So, can you hear me now? And just a minute. Okay, so you can hear me now, right? Um, okay, fine. Hi, hi. I think I was just speaking on mute. Uh, okay, so let's just wait a minute and then let's start. So in today's class, right, I'm just going to start with pivot table. So we'll go through pivot table, and if we have time, I'll get started with recursive SQL queries. And probably by tomorrow, I'll be able to finish recursive SQL queries. And if we have time, we'll try to solve some SQL queries. Okay. Um, I'm glad it helped, Tim. Uh, and then next week, right? So we have the last three sessions remaining. I'll try to finish procedures, store user-defined functions, and then a small project that we will work on. Okay, and then probably after all the sessions are done, I will take one additional session, which will just be like a Q&A session, and to answer any of your questions or doubts that you might have. So I will schedule that session. So our class, the last session that we have is on, I think, 16th September, right? So I'm going to have that session the very next day, that is 17th September. Okay. Uh, okay, so I think probably with that we should be able to finish everything. So the answers for the assignments is already given yesterday. So yesterday in the Telegram group I shared it, and also in Lighthall you would see a folder with assignment solution. I think, right? Has everyone seen the solution? Did you guys check the solution? No? Okay, so I think some of them have checked the solution. So if you have not seen, just I think in the attachment section, yeah. So I have already attached a folder called assignment solution. So you will see the solutions for every assignment that I had shared. So definitely check that out. Check that out also because your solution might be different from my solution, right? And then looking at multiple different solutions, you might get some additional information. So. Um, So PLSQL and performance tuning, I might do it in the future. Not planning anytime soon. Okay. Okay. So I think let's start with today's class. So you guys are able to see me, right? Okay. Now before I start, right, I want to make a important announcement. Okay. So the thing is, yesterday, like the okay, have you guys heard of this platform called learnsql.com? Has anyone heard of that platform? Okay. So some of you guys have not heard. Okay. So basically, this is the platform that I'm talking about. Okay. Learnsql.com. General, it's a very good platform where you will find like a lot of different courses. Okay. So if you go to this course page here, you will basically see all the different courses. Okay. This platform is dedicated for learning SQL. Okay. And you can choose what sort of SQL you want to learn based on the database. So standard SQL is like the SQL that would be basically work for any database. But then if you want to specifically learn with SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, you can filter it down here. Okay, and they have many of these courses. I think one of the most popular courses is this SQL from A to Z that you can check. But these are not free. Okay, I think you need to pay something for that. Something for, I think you can either buy each course, which should be, I think, some $30, or you can buy the entire platform for some, I think, some $100 plus. Okay, but yesterday the Learn SQL team, because I have I have worked with them for some time. Okay, uh, and then they reached out to me yesterday saying that they have one of their courses which they are actually giving it for free. Okay, so the course that they are talking about is this particular course, that is SQL practice set in PostgreSQL. Okay, so this course contains some 88 interactive exercises. Okay, and I have just gone through this course. It's actually a very good course. Okay, and I'm actually surprised that they're giving it for free. So anyone who wants to basically practice SQL, okay, you can definitely, I would highly recommend that you do this course. In fact, everyone who is part of this class, right, all the 400 plus people, I would highly recommend that you go through this course and complete all of these 88 exercises. It is free, you don't need to pay anything. Okay, I'm going to share the link with you, but before that, I'll just tell you what are things that you will practice here. Okay, so you basically all the group by clauses, the aggregate functions, the joins, okay, and the subqueries. So mainly they will focus on these. So basic SQL queries, the aggregation, group by, joins, and subqueries. And I think these concepts are going to be the most important for you as a beginner. Okay, so I would highly recommend that you go through this course. Definitely try to finish all of these 88 exercises. Okay, out of these 88 exercises, most of these are queries that you will need to write. Okay, yes, generally this course I think will cost $29. Okay, but now, and this offer is only until the end of September. Okay, so this is what they told me, only until end of September this is going to be free. After that, I think it will come back to its normal price of $29. So I would highly recommend that you go through this course. I'm going to share the link with you. Okay, I don't get anything if you uh, go if you click on this link or not. Basically, it's not an affiliate link. Basically, I have no. I do not get anything from this. Okay, I'm just telling this because yesterday when I went through this course, I thought, especially you guys, okay, because you guys have learned SQL now from me. Okay, but as I always tell, if you want to really become good at SQL, you need to practice, and this is a perfect course to practice SQL. Okay, now one thing I want to say is this: here they have mentioned it as PostgreSQL, but to be frank, even if you are interested in any other RDBMS, I would still recommend that you take this. Okay, because whatever you learn here, you will be able to apply it in any other RDBMS. That's okay. I don't need anything from that because I'm going to announce this one in my YouTube as well, because because when I went through this course, right, and I have also gone through other courses of Learn SQL. This is a platform that there are like few platforms that I truly respect. Okay, because they genuinely have good contents. And to be frank, right, and this is a fact, whenever I have some questions on SQL, okay, anything, any whatever the concept, if I'm stuck, okay, the first platform that I will look is this platform. Okay, not the courses actually, because I don't really do the courses here, but they have a blog. Okay, so I don't know how you go through their blog. I think it is this one. Okay, cookbook. So here they have like these blogs are actually very very good. Okay, it might be about pivot tables, about recursive SQL queries, about window functions, or many other. They have a lot of blogs. You can see here these blogs actually are of very high quality. I have read blogs from many other platforms, but I feel the blogs that are printed here, right, in this Learn SQL platform is actually good. Okay, so I'm not advertising their platform. I don't get anything from this advertisement, but this is what I actually do. Okay, uh, okay, so go through this course. 100% recommended. Okay, from my side, especially for everyone who is taking this course, because you need to you need to practice SQL, right? And this is a free course you're getting to practice. Okay, after September, I think you will need to pay for it. So try to complete it before September. Okay. Okay, so I think that's one announcement I wanted to do. Now let's go back to our PostgreSQL. Yeah, here. Okay, so what was I doing? Pivot, right? So let's say in order to explain pivot, right, I'm going to be solving a problem which I have taken. I feel it, I'm not sure if it was taken from Stata Scratch or from Lead Code, from some platform long time back I had taken. Probably it is Stata Scratch. Okay. So I have a requirement here, but before that, let me create the data set. Okay. So I have this table here, as you can see. Okay. And so basically this is the SF public salaries. I'm not sure what SF stands for, but you can see that this is a table where you can see there is an employee ID, there is an employee name, there is a particular year, the total pay or their salary, and their job title. Okay, this basically tells what did the employee earn in a particular year. Okay, that is what this table has information. What we are supposed to do is you need to write a query. So basically, to make a pivot table to find the highest payment in each year for each employee. So for each employee, for each year, you need to find their highest payment and make a pivot table out of it. Okay. And they are telling output the payment details along with the corresponding employee name. Okay. So, okay, SF stands for San Francisco. Okay, maybe. Okay, San Francisco public salaries. Um, uh, okay, so anyone not able to create an, because you can create a free account in Learn SQL. It's free actually. Okay, so this is my table and this is my requirement. Okay, now before I can explain you what is pivot table, right? I have two questions. First of all, does anyone know what is pivot? Has anyone used pivot? If not in SQL, maybe in some other tools. Okay, so in Excel, right? Because I think generally most of us came across pivot in Excel, right? In Excel, it is pretty straightforward. You just need to click some button. You are not going to be writing the code yourself. But but in simplest of terms, what is pivot actually? Row to column. Okay. Okay. Right. So ideally, to summarize the data, right? So we transform the data from row to column, and when doing so, we also summarize the data. That is the main purpose of using pivot, right? Now, here you can see that in this and okay, and here you can see that in this particular table, I have this employee Teresa for 2014. She received, I think, $105,000 salary. Okay, and then Ray Torres in 2012 he received $1,121 salary, and so on and so forth. Now, what I need to do is I need to come up with an output where I have one column for employees. Okay, for each employee there should be just one record, and it can happen that some of the employees might have earned salaries in different years, right? So in 2011 they might have earned some salary, 2012 they might have earned some salary, etc., right? So I need the employee name, then I need the salary information for each of the year in a separate column. Okay, so now when it comes to PostgreSQL, we do not have something called as a pivot. Okay, so the four main RDBMS. So we have PostgreSQL. Okay, then we have Oracle, then we have MS SQL, then we have MySQL. Okay, so in PostgreSQL, we do not have something called as pivot, but we have something called as cross tab. Okay. Now this cross tab kind of does the same thing that a pivot does. Okay. But we cannot use this particular keyword or this particular clause called as pivot. Okay. That is not supported in PostgreSQL as of today. Maybe in future, in the future versions, maybe it will get supported. But as of today, I think it is not supported. Okay. So instead of this, we use cross tab. Okay, it kind of does the same thing, but the syntax is different. Okay, so I'm going to explain that. And then in Oracle we have pivot. Okay, and then in Microsoft SQL Server, also we have pivot, and the syntax in Oracle and Microsoft SQL Server is 95% same. There is, I think, one or two difference that I'll talk about. Okay. And then when it comes to MySQL, can anyone tell me in MySQL is pivot supported? Anyone? I thought to send it's very helpful accidentally sent. Not definitely he's case is supported. Okay, so that is right. So Ramesh, in MySQL we do not have pivot and we do not have cross tab. Okay, but rather in MySQL we have something called as case statement. Okay, now the thing is, this case statement is not only supported in MySQL, but we can also do it in PostgreSQL. Basically, case is supported in all the RDBMS. Okay. So generally what happens is whatever you are doing, like whenever you are doing a pivot, writing a pivot query, right? You can kind of do the same thing using case statement. But there are cases where there are certain cases where your let's say the query might be too big, okay, and case statement will be a little pretty slow in that cases if you have a lot of data, and if you have too many columns to transform. Okay, in that case, if you have the possibility of using a pivot or cross tab, it's a better approach. And especially when you go to an interview, your interviewer might specifically ask you to not use case statement. Okay, in that case you should be aware of how to use pivot table or how to use cross tab, depending on which RDBMS you are using. Okay, now let's start by trying to solve this problem using crosstab in PostgreSQL. Once we are done with this, then I will move into the other three RDBMS and show you how you can do the same thing using these clauses. Okay, so now when it comes to crosstab, right? Now, by default, you do not have access to crosstab function. Okay, because crosstab is part of an extension called as table func. Okay, now extension, when I say it, basically kind of means like uh, what do you say, in your browser you can add some extensions, right? So I don't know, maybe in your browser you can add an extension for Google search or something like that, right? So it's like a feature, additional feature that you add, right? So in the same way, in PostgreSQL there are certain functions that are not available by default, but they are part of certain extension. So in order to use that function, you will need to first create that extension. Okay, so in order to use cross tab, we need to create the extension that crosstab is part of. Okay, and extension is we'll just say create extension and table func. Okay, so this is the extension. I first need to create this extension as I did here. Okay, and then only then I can use crosstab. Okay, so I'll just mention here crosstab is crosstab is part of this extension. Okay, once we have created this extension, then we can use crosstab. Now the syntax for creating or using the crosstab function is very simple. So I just need to say select star from, and then I need to provide this function crosstab, and here I need to provide an argument. Okay, so ideally it will accept two arguments, but the second argument is optional. Okay, we'll talk about the second argument. Maybe I'll just mention the syntax here for now. Okay, this is basically my base query. Okay, so this is the query from where you need to provide all the data. Okay, for crosstab to then process and convert the data into a pivot table. Okay, this is the base query here, and then here is kind of like you need to provide the list of columns. Okay, so that is, in this case, for each year I want to create a new column, right? So I need to have an employee name in the first column. The second column will be the salary in 2011. The third column will be the salary in 2012, and so on and so forth. So those list of columns that I need to provide it here. Okay, so once I have done this, then I can also mention, so the final list of columns that will be displayed in the result, I need to mention it here. Okay, and I can give an alias for that. I'll just tell as result. Okay, and here I just need to say column name and data type. Okay, so this is column name 1, and data type, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the syntax. Okay, so for cross tab, so I'll just leave it here, syntax for cross tab. Okay, now you just need to memorize this syntax. There is no other way to learn this. Okay, so it's not like your normal SQL queries where you just write select star from some table. Here, if you're using cross tab, you need to follow this syntax. Okay, so select star from, then your cross tab function name, then cross tab function will accept two arguments. The second argument is an optional argument. Okay, so second argument is optional. So your query would still work even if you do not provide this second argument, but there will be some problems. Okay, if you do not provide a second argument, we'll look at that problems a little later. Okay, and then here you just need to end that query by providing the final list of columns along with its data type that will be returned from this query. Okay, so I hope the syntax is clear. Now let's go ahead and try to solve this problem. So we need to make a pivot table to find the highest payment in each year and in each employee. Okay, so can anyone tell me what could be my base query here? Okay, because my requirement is, so let's say forget about the pivot table. If you had to write the query using this table, okay, so I'm just going to execute this table and I'm going to paste this query here. Okay, can anyone write a query to just do this, that is find the highest payment in each year for each employee? Can anyone write this query? I believe you should be able to write it, but let's see in the next 1 minute who will be able to provide me a query for this. Anyone? So I have the SF public salaries table. I have the ID, employee name, the year, and their total pay and their designation. Okay. What I am interested in is for each employee, for each year, I need to find what was their highest payment. What query would you write for this? Anyone? Let's see. I'm just going to wait a minute. Let's see who can give it. Okay, so Adam has given a query. Select employee year max of this one from this group by. Okay, perfect. So I think Adam's query is correct. Okay, and let's copy Adam's query here, and I'm just going to paste it here. Okay, so I'll just move this to the right. So he has employee. Okay, so maybe the column name is different. It is employee name. Okay, and here employee name and year max of total pay. Okay, so if I execute this, you can see that I am getting all of these records, and you can see I have this employee name. Okay, and I have this year, and whatever their max salary was there, I'm getting it here. Okay, that is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to find for each employee for each year what was their highest salary. So for each employee for each year their highest salary, I have got it here, and the query is very simple. I just use the group by clause, right? So I hope this is fine. And why we needed this was, as part of cross tab, the very first thing that we need is we need a base query. So kind of like when it comes to pivot, right? We don't need to do the aggregation ourselves. Pivot function itself will do, but pivot is not supported in Postgres. But in cross tab, we will need to do this aggregation. So here you can see that I'm already doing the aggregation by using the group by and then fetching the max of the salary, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be using the same query. So I'll cut it here and I'll put it here. Okay. So I'll just move this to the next line. Paste it here. And maybe I'll call it like, let's say max payment. Yeah, something like that. Not really required, but just put it here. And then I have this group by here and here. Okay, so what basically I have done is that same base query that Adam just shared, I just put that query into my first argument inside the cross tab. Okay, so that's your first step. And this, there is a rule that you need to follow when you are providing a query here. Okay, so your first argument here will accept an SQL query, but that SQL query needs to have 3 columns. Okay, so the first column should be basically a unique identifier for each record that will be returned. Okay, so in this case, I know that whatever data is returned, my employee name will be unique, right? I need to find for each employee. I'm taking the data here for each year, right? So my employee name, I can consider it to be unique for each record. In my final result, I want one record for each employee, and if they have salaries in multiple years, that multiple values should be across multiple columns. Okay, so from row it should get to converted into columns, but for each employee I should only have one row, right? In that case, each employee will be my unique identifier for that row, right? So this first column should be the unique identifier. Okay, that's the first rule. The second rule is the second column should provide or display the list of columns, the list of values that will get converted into columns. Okay, so here you can see that if I do a distinct of this, right? So let's say I do a distinct of this table here. Okay. So when I do a distinct of year from my SF public salaries, you can see that I'm getting 2011, 2012, 13, and 14. Okay. So this means this table is having data for 4 years only. Okay. So whatever will be returned. So even when I run this query, right? So this internal query, when I run, the distinct years that I'm going to get is only these 4 years. Okay. So whatever values will get returned from this second column, for each of these values, one new column will be created by crosstab. Okay, so crosstab is going to treat the first column as a unique identifier, and whatever value is going to be returned from the second column, for each value, it's going to create a new column. Okay, so for 2014, it's going to create a column. For 2013, it's going to create, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the second rule. And the third rule is whatever you present in your third column, this has to be the value that will get correspond, that will basically get inserted into the corresponding year. Okay, so this second column will create the multiple columns, and each of those columns will get the values from this particular third column. Okay, and that is why this is the aggregated value. Okay, so for a particular year, so let's say for a particular employee for the year 2014, whatever salary he got, that salary will get loaded into 2014. Okay, if that employee has another salary in 2013, then the 2013 ka salary will go loaded into the 2013th column. Okay, so that is the rule. You need to have three columns. First column is unique identifier. Second column is the list of columns that will be created. Third column is the values that will get loaded into each of these new columns. Okay, I hope that is clear. Okay, and now I told you that this okay, so I should not have overwritten this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is um, I'm going to I'm going to remove this, or let's say let's do one thing. I'll copy this, and I just want to have a section for the syntax. Okay, so this is my base query, and okay, so I'll leave the syntax as it is. Now let's write the solution. Okay, here, and I'll just paste it here. So it's the same thing. Now I told you that this second argument is optional, right? So what I'll do is I'll just comment out this second argument. Okay, and maybe I'll not comment out, I'll just remove it. Okay, and I'll close my cross tab. So you can see in this case, my cross tab is only having one argument. Okay, so that is my base query. Okay, and then the last part is you need to provide all the columns that will be returned from your cross tab. Okay, along with its data type. So the very first column that will get returned, I know, is my employee name, and its data type will be varchar. I can also say as text. Text is also another data type. I'll just use this for now, just for a change. Okay, and then my next columns, what are going to be my next columns? The next columns will be every single value that will be returned from my second column here, that is year. Okay, and I know the values that will be returned here is um, what is it? So 2000, 2011, right? And this will be, let's say, numeric. Okay, I can also make it float or decimal. Okay, because you can see I have decimal points, but numeric also will work. So I'll just use numeric, and here I'll just write the other 3 years. Okay, so 2012, 2013, and 2014. Okay, so let's try to execute this. That's it. Actually, this is the syntax. Okay, you Put cross tab, put your base query, and then here you just mention all the columns that will be returned in your final query along with their data type. Okay. Now let's just run this, and I'm getting an error, and I'm getting an error, I think, because I need to provide it like not with the single quotes, but the actual, this should basically not be like within a single quote, but this should be the actual column name that will get returned. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, instead of giving a numeric column name, I'll just make it like pay underscore 2011. Okay. And here I'll just tell the same thing. So pay underscore 2012, pay underscore 2013, and pay underscore 2014. Okay. Uh, was it because of this, or was it because I missed a comma here? So let me remove this comma. I have some additional commas here. Okay. Now, okay, so 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014. Okay. Now let me run this. Numeric. So let me run this. I'm still getting an error. So let's try to fix. Okay, here there is an additional comma. Now let's try to run this. I'm still getting an error. Invalid data type. Mm, when I run my internal query, so this is an integer year, and this is a double precision. So double precision, I think, should work. Numeric should be able to accept it. Um, Okay, so let's do one thing. Let me change this to float. Okay, so I'll make it float, float, float. And now let's run this. Invalid return type. Row ID does not match return row ID data type. Mm, why am I getting this error? So, okay, is it because I need to have a value here? 2011, 2013, 2014, and 2012. Okay, so let's see if I run this. Still getting the error. Mm, 2011. Syntax error at near this one. So I'm getting some syntax error. Let's do one thing. I'll make it like varchar. I think. Mm, okay, so let's do one thing. I'm going to create the second argument here. Okay, and my second argument, so basically the second argument, uh, it's basically going to return the list of columns that uh, I need to create in my final output. Okay, so either I can hard code the values here, or I can pass it from my table. So I have this query which is returning all the list of columns that I need to create, that is distinct of here. So I'll just put that query here, and now let's see if this works. It still does not work. Why doesn't it work? So I think I'm doing some syntax error here. Um, okay, so I think it should be like this. No. Okay, I'm actually missing something. So let me look at my query here. What am I missing? So I'm actually not missing anything. So let's do this like pay underscore 2011. Okay, so I think now it works. Not sure why it did not work previously. Okay, so pay underscore 2012, pay underscore 2013, pay underscore 2014. Now it works, but 1 minute. Let me remove this second argument because this is an optional argument. So now it is working. What were we doing wrong previously? Did anyone notice what was I doing wrong previously? Because even previously I used this same name and it was giving me an error, right? There is a comma at the end. Where no, so even the text should work. Okay, invalid. Oh, okay. So maybe the text was the problem. Okay, so I think this data type, whatever is getting returned, I need to use the same data type. Okay, so this data type here is character varying, and that is why text does not work. Okay, so this was the problem actually. So Okay, so this is also this I think what I already mentioned. Whatever data type is written from this query, these columns you should mention the same data type. Okay, so the above query here, I think employee name is a character varying, that is a full, that is basically an the same name as varchar. Okay, and then these values here is basically a double precision. Double precision is a name for float. Okay, so I think that's all. Okay, so now I have actually created this query and it is working fine, but there is one problem. Can anyone notice what is the problem here? There is a problem with this data. Can anyone guess what is the problem here? Twice 2013 is given. Twice 2013 is given where the data doesn't match the year. Okay, perfect. So what Brent said is that is correct. Now what happened is I did not give this second argument. Okay, and what SQL did was SQL first executed this base query. From this base query, it got data for some value, and then these values are like, so this is the value corresponding to 2014, this is the value corresponding to 2013, this is the value corresponding to 2011, and so on and so forth. Okay, but since I did not give the second argument, SQL does not have a way to determine each value should correspond to which year, okay, or which column. Okay, so what it does is as soon as it finds a value for a corresponding name, whatever the first column is, into that first column it's going to just put that value. Okay, so when I run this, you can see here everything is put into the first column, because for a corresponding year, whatever value it is getting, it's just putting it into the very first column. It's actually not checking if this value should go into 2011, or if this value should go into 2012 or 2013 or etc. Okay, now I think there are certain employees who have multiple like they got the pay in multiple years. And if I go down, I think no. Okay, there is. I think there should have been, but everyone is just moved into the same column here. Okay, so to avoid that, okay, there are two things that you need to remember in cross step. Okay, first of all, this second argument is an optional argument, but if you want your values to be loaded into the correct columns, always try to give the list of columns here. Okay, so you can either give a SQL query here which is going to return the list of columns, okay, and then whatever value is getting returned here and whatever value is getting returned here, SQL is going to do a match and then going to load the data into that corresponding column. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is you should always use an order by clause here. Okay, so order by, and let's say I'll do order by based on these two columns only. Okay, now again this order by is optional. Okay, but if you do not use order by, your data might go wrong in certain cases. Okay, and I'm going to explain that a little later. But for now, if I execute this, I'm again getting an error. Okay, here. And now if I execute this, now you can see that looks like my data is segregated into the proper columns. Okay, so for Anna Brown, she earned some $238,000 in 2011, but she did not earn anything in any other year. Aaron Smith did not earn anything in 2011, but he earned I think 991,000 something in 2012, and so on and so forth. Right? I hope this data is more clear. Okay, but you can see here I'm getting the values as null. I would not want to display the values as null. Instead of nulls, I would want these values to be printed as like zero, right? Because you cannot tell a salary is for generally whenever you have a numeric value or a float value, a null is not a meaningful value to display. It's better to display zero, right? So let's say if I want to replace this null with zero, can anyone tell me what can I do? How can I do it? And where can I do it? Can I do it coalesce? Yes, we can use coalesce function. We can also use case statement, but I think coalesce is better because it's just a function. It will be much easier to do. So should I put that coalesce here, or should I put it here, or should I create a subquery for that? Anyone? No? Okay. So the best place to do is to put it here, right? I can just tell employee name. Okay, and here I can just tell coalesce of, this is the column name, and if it is null, print as zero, and the actual column name is this one. Okay, and I'll do the same for all the other years. So 12, 13, and 12. Okay. So now if I run this, uh, now I'm getting the proper data. Looks like the data is everything fine. Okay. Now what does Qualys do? Qualys will accept. Uh, I think it accepts multiple arguments. So it's going to look for one argument at a time. It's going to look for the first argument. If that first argument is having a null value, then it will go into the second argument. And if it is null, then it will go to the third argument, and so on and so forth until it finds a non-null value. As soon as it finds a non-null value, it's going to return that. Okay. First, do we need to mention the columns statically? Can't we perform dynamic column mapping? Uh, I think we can. I am not sure of if we can do dynamically. Okay. I think this one you need to manually mention all of these column names. You cannot dynamically do it as far as I know. Okay. So you need to manually mention that. Okay. Now, I have a question for you. Okay, so let's see who can answer this. Okay, now I have this result here, and let's say I will just remove this order by. Okay, and I will run this. Okay, and I'm getting this data. Can anyone tell me what was the difference when I used order by and when I commented order by? Did anyone notice any difference? If they did, what was the difference? Okay, first difference, of course, I will tell. Previously, when I had order by, I think all the names were ordered in alphabet in like the ascending order, right? So because when I run the order by here, you can see the name started with Anna Brown, then all the A first, and then proceeding with B, and so on and so forth. So the data was sorted in the employee name order and then the year order, right? When I remove this order by clause, now you can see the data is not ordered. So Tara is in the beginning, then Donald, and then like the data is scattered across in no particular order. Okay, so that's one difference. But other than this, there is a major difference. Can anyone notice that records fetched are different? Meaning, let's see who actually focused on the difference. Probably placing the data in. Okay, the data is not placing in the wrong year. Okay, so the placing of the data is still correct. No problem with that. But there is one problem. Did anyone notice the difference? If you want, I'll run the query one more time and let's see who can spot the difference. Okay, so this is the query without the order by. You can see here everything. Okay, and now I'll put the order by and I will run this query, and now I'm getting this data. So can anyone tell what is the difference? It started placing the value from 2011. No, actually the placing two less records. Okay, so correct. Okay, so what Murali tells is correct. Two less records, because you see here when I executed this query using the order by clause, I'm getting 198 records. Okay, let's say now when I commented out order by and when I ran this, now I'm getting 200 records. So how did an order by reduce the number of records? Ideally, from whatever we have learned from order by, we know that order by does not have to do anything with the number of records, right? It is just going to sort the data in a particular order. That's the only purpose of order by, right? Order by should never reduce or increase the number of records, right? But in this particular case, when you are using cross tab, order by is very important. If you do not have order by, in some cases, not every time, in some cases, you might not get your desired results. Okay, the reason for that is, I'll tell you what exactly is happening. Okay, but in order to tell you what exactly is happening, I need to show you the record which is actually okay. So I have one question for you. Let's see who can answer this. Now, when I used order by, I got 198 records. When I removed order by, I got 200 records. Now I want to identify those two additional records which I am getting when I am not using order by. Can anyone tell me how can I find those two additional records? Anyone who has an idea of how to find those two additional records? Minus? Okay, perfect. So Brent is correct, but only thing is in PostgreSQL we do not have minus, we have except. Kind of does the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this same query here and I'll put it here. Okay, and here I'll just say except. Okay, so I'll remove the semicolon from here. So here I have no order by, and here I put the order by, and now when I run this, so now I'm getting these four records. Okay, so these are Okay, I'm getting four records because they belong to the same two employees. Okay, uh, but the thing is, one is this Patrick and the other is Emilia. Okay, these are the two records that I am kind of like um, getting issues when I'm not using the order by clause. Okay, so let's try to better understand this and let's see what exactly PostgreSQL is doing. Okay, now to better understand this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to query the data for these two employees. So I'm just going to say employee name is in these two. Okay, so if you notice properly, right, what is happening is these are the only two employees who are having data for multiple years. Okay, so they have data for 2013 and they have data for 2014. Okay, so for example, let's say if I come back here, so I'll do select employee name, comma, what was that year? Okay, from this SF public salaries. Okay, and I'll say group by this, and I'll say having of count of one. Okay, and here let's say I put count of one. Okay, and if I run this, having of count of one, if I run this, what is the problem here? Argument must be of type bool. Oh, okay, okay, having count of one greater than one. Okay, so if I run this, not, I need to remove the year. Okay, if I run this, now you can see that when I went to this table and I did a group by based on each employee and I wanted to see how many employees are having multiple records in this table. These were the only two employees who are having multiple records. Why they have multiple record is because they have the data for two different years, for 2013 and 2014. Okay, now internally what is happening is when I run this query. Okay, so for example, when I run this, okay, so when I run this query here, okay, I'm getting this data. Now let's try to search for these two people. Okay, that is who are these, Patrick and Emilia. So let's try to manually search them. Patrick, can anyone see it? Maybe I'll just zoom in. Patrick, okay, so I think this is the Patrick, right? Yeah, this is the Patrick here. Okay, now the reason, uh, in this query, the only difference between these two queries is now I have run this query where I have not put the order by. So one of the record of Patrick for 2013, I'm getting it here in the 35th record, and the other record of Patrick, uh, I think, I'm getting it here. Okay, so one record of Patrick is in the 110th record, and the other record of Patrick is in the 35th line here, right? So these two records. Okay, this is what is happening when I'm not using order by. Okay, now let's come back to the other query where I'm using an order by, and I'll run this same query here. Okay, and now when I search, so if I want to search for Patrick, I can just go for P because the data is sorted using order by. And if I go to Patrick, okay, now you can see that I have the data for Patrick. They are basically in the like what, corresponding to each other, right, in the very next line. So 149th line and 150th line. Okay, this is the only difference that is happening when you use an order by and not using an order by. When you're using an order by, all the data based on their employee and the year are sorted in the proper order. So if there are any employees who have multiple records, their records will be corresponding to each other, right? When I'm not using an order by, their records might be scattered across any record, right? Internally, how PostgreSQL does the processing of a cross tab function is that basically what it does whenever it finds the employees. Okay, because here I am doing the group by based on employee and the year, right? So whenever it gets a combination of this employee, okay, for each employee it's going to create one row. Okay, and its corresponding value corresponding to that particular year. So in this case for 2013, that year will be, that value will be loaded into the column of 2013. Okay, and when it's doing this processing, it goes into the corresponding records. Okay, and in the corresponding records, again, if it's finding that same name, then it's still going to follow, it's still going to use that same row, and the value corresponding to 2014 will be loaded into the 2014 column. Okay, but in case it finds Patrick in one of the rows, so that is the previous record where it found Patrick first in 35th row, so it already created one row for that particular name. Okay, and then it continued with processing other employee names, and then in the 110th row it found Patrick again. Okay, in that case, it has already created a row for Patrick first, and then when it finds a Patrick again after many other rows, it will again create another row for Patrick, and this time the value will be loaded to for 2014. Okay, so what I mean to say is, in PostgreSQL crosstab, the the way how SQL is going to create a pivot, okay, that is one row for each unique identifier, and then the values scattered across multiple different columns. It's going to do that based on the values it is finding when it is processing the number of records returned from this query. Okay, if you want just one row to be created for each unique identifier, then make sure that you have an order by using that unique identifier, so that it's going to consider all of those unique identifier, in this case the employee names, together as one single row. If it finds these employee names in multiple different rows which are not corresponding to each other, then whenever it finds that name, it's going to create a row. Okay, and that is why in this particular case, for here, right? So since I have four records, it finds this Patrick first in the 35th record, it creates a row. Then again it finds Patrick in the 110th record, and it creates another row. So for Patrick it's going to create two rows, and for Emily it creates two rows. So that is why the two rows are extra. Okay, that is why without order by you're getting 200 records, and with order by you get 198 records. Okay, this is the reason when you're using crosstab function, it's very important that you need to use an order by here, even though it is not mandatory. Okay, and the same thing, the second argument is also very useful. If you don't use it, your data might be wrong. Okay, I'm not sure how much you understood this. Okay, but if you are using PostgreSQL, and if you are going to ever use a crosstab function, and if you don't know how order by is going to change your result and how the second argument is going to change your result, you will really struggle to debug that issue. To be frank, I struggled a lot when I was starting to use crosstab. I had no idea why I was getting wrong data. Okay, because everything else was working fine, but I was getting wrong data because I don't think so there are any documentation which is going to tell you how order by is going to uh, change your result, or how the maybe about second argument you still have documentation, but I have not found online anyone mentioning about how this order by will change your result. Okay, I hope this is clear. If it is confusing, if you're not clear, right, I would recommend that you watch the recording again and try to understand it. Okay, and try to write the query yourself and see the result. Okay. Um Okay, so any questions? I think you should have taken a better data set just for understanding purpose. What do you mean by better data set? So the data should be sorted to consider every record. No, every record will get considered, but if it finds an employee at one place and then it finds that same employee at other place, it's going to create two different records. But if it finds that employee corresponding to each other, then it's still going to create only one record. Okay, that's internally how crosstab works. To be frank, I this is actually not the right way for the crosstab to work, but that's how it is built. It had only 198. That is fine. Whether I use with 198 unique employees or more, this was actually a real interview question asked in some of, I think, one of the FANG companies. So I think the data set is pretty good for explanation. I have actually made another YouTube video in YouTube. In YouTube, I have made a video about the same thing. Okay, there I think you will find a different data set that I have used. Maybe you can watch that as well. Crosstab is used, um, not a lot, but it is used. Okay, so I have used it in one of my projects that I built. Okay, um, you just go to my channel TechTFQ and search for pivot. Okay, you will find it. There's only one video with pivot. Okay, okay. So I hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, Any confusion? I'm sure you may not be very clear about this order by, because even when I was learning about it, it took me a lot of time to really understand. Okay, I had to go through the data, I had to write multiple queries, scan the data again, write multiple queries. So you will also need to do the same thing. Okay, uh, but at least you, I hope you got some understanding. Okay, okay. So yes, you will need to, because it's not very simple to understand. Okay, that is why I took so much of time to explain this. I do not want to explain this again because so much time is required again. Column name is does not need to be pay underscore 2011. I can give whatever name. I can give any name, but whatever name you give here, that is what will get displayed. So 2011, I'll use it here. Okay, I'll use the same name here. And now if I run this, it still works. Okay, so this column name is just my naming. You can give whatever name you want. Okay, uh, why do you need three columns? Okay, why do you need three columns? Good question. The thing is, pivot has that requirement that it needs a unique identifier, it needs the list of columns that you need to derive, and for each of this newly derived column it needs to know what values has to be loaded, right? So that is the purpose, right? So the each of these three column has a main purpose when it comes to pivot. Okay, what is pivot? You make from row to column, and when you are converting from row to column, so basically some of the row values you will create it as columns, and for each of those columns you need to add some values, right? And so that is why you need this, right? You need a unique identifier for each row. You need the new list of columns that to be created using this cross tab or pivot, and for each of these new columns you need to have the values, right? So this is kind of the minimum requirement for using a cross tab. Okay, I think you can use more columns as well. Okay, only you can, so minimum is three columns. Okay, but if you want to add more than three columns you can do that, but the thing is, I think the values needs to be hard coded. Okay, so for example, let's do one thing. Okay, so I'm just going to try it out. So three column is minimum. If I remove any of this column, so let's say if I remove this, then I think your query is not going to work. Okay, so the provided SQL must return three columns. Okay, so here itself it's giving the clear explanation telling that the provided SQL must return three columns. Row ID. So when they say row ID, I just refer to it like unique identifier. The category. So this is referred to as category. That is, for each value in that category, one column is getting created, and then this the last column is the values that will get corresponding to each of this category. Okay, so three columns are mandatory, but I think I can have the fourth column. So let's say something. Okay, maybe test. Okay, let's say I'll have a test column here. Okay, as maybe test. Okay, so let's see if this works. Oh, query specified return tuple has five columns, but cross tab returns six. Okay. I think here also I need to add that column. Okay. So I'll say test, and this will be, okay. So what is the data type of this test? Um, Test as test. Why is this throwing an error? Max payment. And this one. Okay, okay. Here I am running this. Okay. So now if I run this, so this is working. So I will put the double quotes here so that it gets escaped, since I'm putting it inside as an argument. And this is my column test. And here, let's say this test is a text, right? So I'll put the data type as text. And now let's say here, if I want to run a test, and if I run this, okay, so now also it is working. So you can add multiple more columns. Okay, but the thing is, these columns needs to be like having some constant values. Okay, I cannot, if I take any column values from this table, then I will need to do the group by of that column, and then my data might change. Okay, but if you have a requirement like that, you can still put it. Okay, but minimum is you need to have these three columns. Okay, double quotes in test is because this query I have put it inside the single quotes, right? If I remove the double quotes, then it's going to throw me an error. Okay, So it's just to escape. It's like an escape character. I'm putting double quotes here. Okay. What is the use of two single quotes? Uh, so so it's like, so the thing is, this SQL query, I'm passing it like an argument, right? So here, if I did not use, so let's say if I just used one single quote, okay, this query is going to throw an error, okay, and it's going to tell that syntax error. Why? You can see here. So I opened a single quotes here and I ended a single quotes here. Okay. And then I wrote some text without a single quotes, and then I have some single quotes. So SQL is confused what exactly is happening. Okay. So that is why if you want to use any text, okay, within an single quotes, then you need to, you can, I think either you can put it like double single quotes here, or I think you can escape the single quotes using the escape character. So probably like this. Okay. Mm, does this work? Yes, I think you can do this as well. So let's run this. Even this does not work here. Okay, so I think in this, in PostgreSQL, the only way to escape a text inside a single quote is by using this value here. Okay, so you can just try it out. Not something very complex. It's not actually a regex, it's just an escape character that we always use. Okay. Anyways, I only have 30 minutes now. I hope this question is a little clear here. Let's move on to the another database. Okay, because some of you guys will not use crosstab, you may use pivot. So what I'll do is, let's say I'll go to Oracle first. Okay, so in Oracle we have something called as pivot. Okay, and I have already created this same table, so it's having the same 200 records here. Okay, now in Oracle we do not have cross tab, but we have pivot, and the syntax for pivot is, I just need to say select star from. Okay, then so this is a syntax. Okay, here you need to provide your base query. Okay, and then here you need to use your pivot keyword. Okay, and then here you basically provide your um, aggregate function plus column list. Okay, so syntax in Oracle. Okay, so okay, so when it comes to Oracle, I'm not sure if you're able to see it. Should I zoom in this one? So let's try to zoom this. Okay, so okay, fine. So this is the syntax of using pivot. Now let's try to solve this problem. Again, the first thing that we need to do is we need to come up with a base query. But here the base query does not need to do the aggregation because pivot function will do all the aggregation for us. Okay. So I'm going to write this query. So I'm just going to say solution. Okay. And I just need to say select star from. Okay. And here I need to write my query, right? So I'll just move this to the right, and here I can just tell select from. Okay, again in pivot as well, they have the same requirement. You need to have three columns. The first column is your unique identifier or your row ID. Okay, the second column is a category or the list of values. So the list of values, I'll get it from my column here. Okay, and the third column is the value that basically is my total pay, right? Total pay. Okay. Previously in PostgreSQL, I had done the group by and then I had put the max of here. But in this particular case, I don't need to mention that here. Okay. We mentioned that in the next step. Okay. But here the table name is SF public salaries. Okay. So that's all. This is the base query. I just need to mention all the column names and from which table. That's it. Okay. Once I have done that, the next step is I need to mention pivot. Okay, and inside pivot here, this is where I need to provide my aggregation. So here I need to tell the third column is basically the value, right? What aggregation I should do for this value. So that one I can just tell here like max of this one, max of this particular column. That is my aggregation. The second thing I need to mention here is the list of values. So I need to say for I think here in, because I know the list of values is coming from this column. So year in, and here I need to provide all those values. So I'll say 2011, and I'll give a column name for that, like let's say pay underscore 2011. Okay, and let me copy this whole thing. Okay, so this is 2011, 2012, 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014, and 2014. Okay, so I think probably that's all. Very simple. It looks like not too complicated here. So this is your base query. Just mention from which table which columns you need to fetch, and then here you need to mention two things. First, you tell on which column aggregation should happen, and next you tell for the category column what are the values that is going to be written from this column. And if you want to give an alias, this alias you can use, so that when the query gets returned, you will return with this column name. If I did not, this is optional. If I did not provide this, then the column name would be just this. Okay, so now let's try to execute this, and you can see that I am already getting the data. Okay, so here it is all null. Okay, and all the values are actually corresponding to the correct column names by default here. Okay, so like cross tab, I don't have to give a second argument here. I don't need to provide a matching columns. I don't need to provide any order by. I don't need to do a group by. I don't need to do any aggregation here. Okay, so this I think is much simpler syntax than cross tab, because in cross tab you saw we had this many things. But one more thing I want to do is I'll just copy this select statement here. Okay, so in Oracle also I think Qualys is supported. So I'm just going to put that same thing here. Okay, so that the nulls gets uh, replaced by 0. Okay, and now let me run this, and you can see that it's working fine, and I think I should be getting 198 records. Yeah, so I'm getting 198 records. Okay, so nothing much to explain here. If you know the syntax of how pivot works, then everything else is very similar to what I already explained in crosstab. Okay, any confusion about this, or is it clear? This is a new data set. Any confusion about how to use pivot in Oracle? Okay, clear. Of course, I will be including this in the notes. Okay, I'll do one thing. Let me create the note right now. Okay, this is session 17, right? First of all, let's go to here. I'll copy all of this and I'll put it here. And then this is the solution in Oracle. Pivot in Oracle. So that is there. And then I'll tell pivot in MS SQL. Okay. So I have already copied it to the notes. Still can't connect to Telegram. You need to message me in Telegram, Benjamin, or you need to give me your username, or you can email me your username, or you give me your phone number. Okay, then I'll manually add you. Uh, yeah, so this one right here, I think you need to provide these values manually. Okay, I think alternatively there is another. I think using pivot, I don't think so. You can dynamically pass a value here. Okay, maybe there is some other concept, some XML pivot or something, but that one I will not cover. But just by using pivot here, you need to provide all the column values manually. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to Microsoft SQL Server. The syntax is very similar. Okay, this one is MySQL, and okay, so this is the Azure Data Studio, and here you can see that I have already created the same table. It's having the same data. Okay, uh, 198, 200 records. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm copying the same query that I wrote in Oracle. Okay, Oracle and Microsoft SQL Server both support pivot, but there is a small syntax difference. Okay, so if I execute this query, it's going to throw an error. Okay, the few things that you need to do is, first of all, in Microsoft SQL Server, any value you cannot present it in single quotes. I think you can present it either in double quotes, or you can put this square bracket. Okay, so I'm just going to put a square bracket here in Microsoft SQL Server. That is what you need to follow. So square bracket here and here, and here and here. Okay, here. Okay, so this is the first change. Now again, I think there is one more error. Okay, so the another error is here I cannot give an alias. Okay, inside this list of values that I'm providing, I cannot give an alias here. So I need to remove this alias. Okay, only supported in Oracle. It's not supported in Microsoft SQL Server. So I remove this alias. Okay, so that's the second thing. And then again, I have an error. The third error is that uh, okay, so the third error, I think for here, right, I need to give an alias for my entire subquery. Okay, so here X, and let's say I'll give it this like Y. Okay, now let me run this. Now I'm still getting an error. Why am I getting an error for here in this? Okay, so this not Y is not here, but here. Okay, so let me run this. Now I'm getting an error. Okay, because this here the values that I'm getting is this one, right? So 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014. So I'll give that value here. I'll run this. Okay, so now I'm getting the output again, the same 198 records. Okay, uh, so the syntax is very similar. Only difference is in Oracle. In Oracle, we had the single quotes. Here we need to use the square bracket, and in Oracle we could use an alias here for each of the listed columns, but here you don't need to give an alias. And in Oracle it was not mandatory to give an alias for this base query and for the pivot query, but here it is mandatory. Okay, so that's the only three change. Okay, I hope this is clear. Can you put in bracket here? You mean this one, is it? I think you can put it probably. Okay, let's try out. So you can put it, it still works. Okay, so that's up to you. I'll just copy this and put it as a solution for Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, let's move on to the last one in MySQL. Okay, so now let's go on to the MySQL. Okay, so this is the MySQL workbench. Okay, now I have a question for you. I'm going to give you maybe 3-4 minutes. Okay, can anyone solve this same problem using case statement? The same problem that I have here. Okay, can anyone solve it using case statement? Okay, can you guys try? You data set, but I'll show you the table data. Okay, so this is my table data that I have. Can anyone solve the same problem? You already know what the problem is, what is expected. Can you solve it using case statement? Let's see who can give me a solution. I'll just wait 2 minutes. Huh? Now it is 8:45 for me. I'll just wait up to 8:47. Okay, so I think the query that Adam shared, his idea is correct. Okay, so maybe I'll try to solve it. Okay, and as year 2014, or maybe I'll wait 1 minute. I told I'll give 2 minutes, so only 1 minute is up. Let's see if anyone else can give a query for this. So there is a question in the Q&A tab. Can you please explain the nested case statement? Nested case statement. Okay, so I'll take this nested case statement question. So I'll do one thing. Okay, I'm going to create a new file, and I'll tell these are the queries. I will all the unanswered questions. Right, I'll try to answer it in one single session. So I'm going to create this in here, and I'll tell answered queries or unanswered questions, not txt. Okay, so this one is from Ramesh, right? From Ramesh, explain nested case statement. Okay, so this one I'll come back, Ramesh. Okay, I just need to come up with an example for that. Select employee name, sum of this one, then this one from this one. Okay, so I think Ramesh, the query that you have given is correct. And Siva, also your query is correct, but you guys are using sum. Okay, I think we don't need to use sum here. We need to use max because the question was to fetch the highest payment, not the total payment, right? Okay, so let's come back to MySQL. Okay, and let's see how we can solve this. Now I have this data here. I need to, and let's say if I come back and okay, so okay, so I need to find the highest payment in each year and in each employee, right? So I need to group the data basically for each year and each employee. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I have this. I'm just going to say group by employee name, comma year. Okay, so let's okay. Do I need year? Because my final output that I have, if you see, okay, so my final output that I got from my pivot. Okay, where was that? Um, so my final output was this one, right? Okay, here you can see the data is segregated based on each employee. Okay, and then I needed to create these four columns. So looks like I don't need to do the grouping based on year. For each employee itself should be enough. Okay, so I'll do employee name and what next? Next, for each year I want to create a separate column, right? So I can do that by using the case statement. I can just tell case when year equal to 2011, then I want to display the total pay corresponding to that particular record. Okay, else if the current process, the record that is getting processed is not 2011, then I want it to be displayed like 0. Okay, and this whole I will just call it like pay underscore 2011. Okay, and I'll just do the same for every year. Okay, so this will be 2012, 2013, 2014. This is 2012, 2013, 2014. Okay, now if I run this, can anyone tell me will it work or is it going to throw an error? Anyone? It will work. If it's not going to work, can you tell me why it will not work? You need to give max. Okay, but why does total pay not defined? Total pay is not defined. Not give properly. Is the column name not total pay? Total pay is the correct column name, right? What is the reason this will throw an error? Anyone? Jay, are you here? Can you tell me will this work? Or if it does not work, can you tell me why it will throw an error? Elias? No? I want to know the reason why this is going to throw an error. Okay, but I want to know the reason why it is going to throw an error. I remember one of the guys, I think Jay, he had asked me a question which was something similar to this. So, Jay, if you are watching this, can you tell me why this will throw an error? Column is not in group by. Okay, perfect. Right. So, the simple answer is your group by is having one column, but in your select clause, you have that one column, and then you also have this total pay column and also this year column, right? The rule is either you mention all the columns that you're using in your select clause inside the group by, or whatever columns you have mentioned in the group by, you mention it in the select clause. Any other column needs to be within the aggregate function, right? So that is the problem here. So if I run this, okay, so if I run this, it's going to throw an error. So it's going to throw an error telling that basically the same error, okay, something, okay. How can I fix that is either I can put this here. Okay, so I can put this here, and I can put this total pay inside the group by. Okay, now if I run this, will it work or will it throw an error? Anyone? Can you guess? Error? Anyone? Will it work or is it going to throw an error? Not work. It will not work. Error. Okay. Error. Anyone else? Why is here blue? Here is blue because it's a keyword, I think. Okay. Any keywords will be highlighted in blue. It's specific to each tool and each database. Wrong output. Okay. Wrong output, but it might work. Right? So let's see. So you can see that it is working. It's not going to throw an error, but the output is wrong. Right? What is happening here is um, I'm getting some value here. Okay. But how many records am I getting? I don't know. I think maybe I don't see the number of records here, but this output is wrong. Okay. The reason why it is wrong is I have grouped the data based on all the columns here, based on total pay, based on the year, everything. Okay. This is not what I wanted. I wanted to group the data. Yeah. So I think it has 200 records. Where can you see that it is mentioned 200 records? I don't know. Okay. I can count it if I want. So I can just select count of one from this table, and let's see how many records I count of one from X, 200 records. So first of all, the data is wrong. Number of records are also wrong. Okay. So this will work. Okay. So syntax wise, there is no problem with this query, but logic wise, as per our requirement, this is not what as per our requirement, what we want is we need to group the data based on each employee, right? So I cannot include all the columns in my group by clause, but rather what I can do is I can enclose these columns within the aggregate function, and that is the max function. Okay. So I can just say this one, max of this, max of this, max of this, and this. Okay. Here I can close the bracket here, close the bracket here, and close the bracket here. And now if I run this, this will return me the correct output. Okay. And this is having what 198 records. Okay. Let's check that. So select count of one from this X 198. Okay, so this is the correct output. Okay, uh, I hope this is clear. Nothing too complex about this particular query, right? Everything is pretty straightforward here. We have already explained all of these concepts in much before classes, which is expensive query, case statement, pivot, or cross step. Now if you're using MySQL, you basically have no other option. You have to use case, because here neither pivot is supported nor cross tab is supported. Okay, and in this particular case, for this small data, whatever you use, it does not make a much difference. Okay, but I think in certain cases, in if you look at my YouTube video, right, the query that I've taken is a very I think it's a much bigger query. There is a lot of processing happening, and then if you have like thousands of records, I think this using this function, this pivot would be better. Okay, rather than using this case statement. Okay, so but it depends on how big your data is. Okay. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll copy this solution in my notes. So okay, so I think that's all I have for today's class. Is it clear about pivot? I wanted to also start with recursive SQL queries, but I don't think so. We have enough time for me to explain recursive queries, but I'll explain it in the next class. Okay. Any questions that you have? Okay, so one more thing, any unanswered questions, okay, or any query that you did not understand, try to provide that to me in the Telegram group. Okay, just tag my name, okay, telling that like at TechTFQ, and tell that pending solution or pending answer or something like that. Just put one sentence there, and then mention your question. Okay, because I'm going to collect all of these questions and I'm going to create a file out of that, and then the additional session that I'll be creating at the end, right, uh, which is going to be the 21st session, there I am going to answer only those questions that you have already asked me. Okay, I'm not going to take any new question during the class. I'll take the question that you provide me in a list. Okay, so you can provide me that list in Telegram group. Okay, is it common to have thousands of various data in many columns in financial analysis? Uh, is it common to have thousands of various data in columns? I don't get your question. So, when you say thousands of various data in many columns, like from 1900 to 2022, what do you mean by thousands of various data in many columns? Thousands of various data in many columns. So, okay, maybe you did not frame it correctly, but if you are asking, like, is it common to have data um, across multiple years, like financial data across multiple years? Yes, it is very, very common. In fact, the current data that I am working on is I work for the insurance company, and we are I'm mainly working with the financial data. Okay, so we have data from 1950s or 1957. Okay, so from 1957 until 2022, okay, we have transaction data that has happened in the insurance policies. Okay, so we we handle such data. We are basically migrating such data into a data mart. So it is very common. Is there a year from 19? Is there a year from 1900 to 2020? Then you need to write a lot of lines. Yes, the queries that we write are hundreds of lines long. Okay, in fact, uh, I have not in this project, okay, because here I am mainly writing SQL queries, but I'm not mainly writing procedures and packages and everything. But in my previous jobs, I have written packages which were 20,000 lines. 20,000 lines of packages. Of course, I didn't write it myself. We were a team. Okay. There were packages which were 20,000 lines, more than 20,000 lines. Okay. Those packages used to have like hundreds of different procedures, functions, and so many different things. Okay. And some of those procedures would have SQL queries which were hundreds of lines long. Okay. So that is pretty common if you're working on a big project, and especially that was when I was trying to build a product for my company. So if you're working with when you're building a product using SQL or PLSQL, you will be writing very big queries and very big procedures and packages, etc. Okay. um, can you have a big project? Can you share a big project code? I cannot. I cannot share my own project code. Okay. um, it's not it's not ethical, right? And I don't know online if you can get real project code. Maybe you can get. Okay, I do not have such codes actually with me. Can you share a mega project with long lines? Uh, i i do not have a, to be frank, I have, but I don't want to share because uh, okay, the projects where which I did like a freelancer, I cannot share it, right? I have my own restrictions. But I think if you search online, maybe you might get. Okay, so if you want a very big project with like thousands of lines of code, you will get it. uh, yes, if I share it, I'll be in big trouble. Okay. Is there a year? Then you need to write tracked. I tracked sales. Okay. Can we use Marku to recreate a very Mokaru? You mean Mokaru, is it? You can use Mokaru. Okay, but Mokaru you can use to create a data set, right? If you're looking for a procedure which is having thousands of lines, then Mokaru is not going to provide you that. But dataset, yes, you can create with thousands of lines. But I think you have a limitation of only 1,000 lines. It is free. If you want more than 1,000 lines of dataset, then you need to pay something. Okay. How do you compile hundreds of lines of code? It's all part of the work, Abhi. Like different companies have different tools. We all compile. So when I was working with this particular project that I mentioned, I was working in PLSQL mainly, and we were using in at that moment in our company we had this PLSQL developer. I am not sure if you have heard, and we were using Oracle. Okay, so I was using the tool PLSQL Developer, and we were executing it in PLSQL Developer. But that is where we used to write our code. But when it comes to when we implemented the project for the client side, okay, we had a ETL tool, okay, called Data Matrix. It was a ETL tool where we had configured jobs. So we had different jobs configured for different purpose. I was also part of data migration project that time. So I was migrating data from a very old core banking system to a new core banking system. So we had a ETL tool which was sitting in between. It used to we had written a job. There was one job to go to the source table, fetch the data from the source table, and load it into our staging table. There was another job which would transform all the data. Okay, so we would transform the data into whatever the new format we wanted, and then there was a final job which would move the data from our transformed schema into the final destination. Okay, so all of these jobs basically used to be automated. We had a uh, what is that called, um, end of day jobs. Okay, which would, there are jobs which used to run every day. Okay, every end of the day. There were jobs which used to run once in a month. There are jobs which used to run once in a year. Okay, and all of these jobs would internally call either some procedure or some SQL queries or some packages, etc. Okay, so it was all SQL code mainly. Okay, we also had Java actually. Okay, so we were using Java and SQL together at that time. Okay, okay, so I think, is there any difference between pandas and SQL? Yes, pandas and SQL are two different things. Pandas is a library in Python. Okay, it's mainly used for data analytics. You can, so in pandas mainly we have something called as data frames, which kind of can represent data in the form of a SQL table. Okay, it can be useful for analyzing data and then processing the data, etc. Okay, I want to I for pandas, for NumPy, and for Matplotlib, I want to create tutorial videos on YouTube. Okay, so maybe I will do it. To be frank, I have, I'm currently doing like too many things. So hopefully by December I will be free, and then I will start thinking about this Python tutorial, and hopefully I'll start a Python course as well. Um, Yeah, Pandas is fantastic. What ETL tools you recommend? Okay, so in my current project that I'm working, the ETL tool that we use is Talent. Okay, uh, I'm not sure if you have heard of Talent. We use Talent here, but in my previous companies, I I have personally used Data Matrix. It was an in-house ETL tool of one of my companies. Uh, I think the most popular ETL tool is Talent and Informatica, right? And then there is one more from IBM. What was that? What is that called? I forgot. Uh, Data Stage, right? Yeah. So I think these are all popular tools. I think if you learn Talent or Data Stage or Informatica, I think any one tool is pretty good, because if you learn any one of the ETL tool and you go for another job, they may be using some other ETL tool. It's very easy to uh, move from one tool to another, because the concepts are the same. Maybe some things will be different, but once you understand how ETL works, then no matter what tool you use, you will get the idea of it. It's the same like, okay, not same like SQL. SQL in different databases is like 90% same, but ETL, the interface and everything might be different, but the concepts will be the same. Machine learning, maybe not now, much later. Okay, I'm not very good with machine learning. Okay, I would just say that I am good with SQL and Python, but other things I still need to learn, and hopefully in the future I'll do. I try to get through automate the boring stuff before you teach your Python class in December, whenever. Yeah, sure, Kim. That's fine. That is good. Okay, so I'm going to end the class today. Hey, okay, so I forgot a very important thing. I have assignments for you guys. Okay, uh, I'll share with you the assignment. Okay, just a minute. So assignments, session 17. Okay, so I have two SQL queries. Okay, one is the growth of Airbnb. Okay, so let me open this. Okay, you can just see that here, right? So I have the problem statement here. I have the data set here. Okay, and you just try to solve the problem, and the expected output from that Airbnb is mentioned here. Okay, I'm not sure if this is all the records, but this is some of the records. Okay, try to get the output similarly. And the second question is highest cost orders. So you have this problem statement here, read it, understand it. These are all the data sets that you need to create. Okay, and the expected output is mentioned here. Okay. So this assignment, two queries, try to solve it. If you're not able to solve it, I will try to help you. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe I'll give you a few days to solve it. Okay. So maybe I'll give the solution to this next week. Okay. Okay. So I think that's all. And I highly recommend go through that. Uh, what was that, the course that I mentioned in Learn SQL. Okay, so 88 practice questions. I think that will definitely, whatever you have learned in my course, right, if you do that particular class in PostgreSQL, I can guarantee you your foundation is going to be solid. Okay, you will be very comfortable with subqueries, joins, uh, group by aggregations, everything. Okay, so try to do that and try to complete this assignment. So that's all, everyone. I'm going to end the class now. I hope the classes have been helpful. You have learned SQL, and we only have another 4 or 5 sessions remaining. Okay, so last one more week to go. I'll try to get to. Okay, okay. So I think that's all. Thank you, and let me stop sharing.